Wow, it's time for another show full of tips and ideas from the sales growth leadership expert, Dean Akers. Known for his experience in hyper-growing companies and creating cultures for high-performance teams, here's Dean.
Well, welcome to episode 35. It's exciting as we continue to grow. This past week we were, again, number one on iTunes video business section. So it's always exciting to have so many people downloading us across the country and, quite frankly, across the world. We're up to 115 countries now. I actually don't know how many countries could possibly do it, but the map continues to white out, and we're excited about that. Today's program is pretty near and dear to my heart because I had some real events this past week that precipitated the thought process for this week's show, which is training life or death. I have been honored to be a participant in the City of Tampa Police Department's Citizens Academy. It's an academy that teaches the citizens a lot of what the police go through in their training and what they go through in their daily lives. We get to be a participant in understanding 911, stops, different things they do. And so why did that precipitate today's show? And why is training? Why would I harp on training? Well, it really dawned on me that in business, when I've always been developing my companies, I've always been a freak for training, but never put it in perspective that our police forces and our military does. And one of our training leaders in the police academy framed it out best, and it just hit home with me when he said, the reason that we train every week, and we train scenarios, and we train situations, is we want to train to the extent that we mitigate what I call the decision-making tree that takes time. When we're in situations, we only have milliseconds to make a split-second decision, which, quite frankly, has to come almost out of a reflex in order to create what we know will be a predictable outcome because of our training. And they did tons of examples with us. They put us in situations with simulators and where we had not had training. And in every case, I can clearly share with you, our listeners and our watchers today, Mr. Dean got shot, knifed, killed, made bad decisions, shot wrong people. Everything that I did without the training and in a split-second scenario of making decisions without any predisposed knowledges on how to make the decision to the extent that my reflexes help control that decision because of my training to end up with predictable outcomes, I had bad results. So how does that work for training in business? And why is it so important? So I'm reminded of a story I learned many, many years ago, the two lumberjacks. And the two lumberjacks, the one lumberjack was the class lumberjack. Nobody could ever outcut wood to this lumberjack. And everybody would come from all far and wide to take on this lumberjack for a day's worth of cutting wood, and who would have the highest outcome would win. And this lumberjack always won. Until one day, this young person came in, a much smaller frame, came in to challenge this lumberjack. Everybody laughed. Oh my goodness, this kid could never beat the lumberjack. I mean, he doesn't have the physical size, doesn't have anything that our champion has. So they started chopping wood. 50 minutes into the first hour, the person that had challenged disappears into the shed. All the spectators are laughing. They're going, he doesn't even have the stamina to keep up. He has to go take a break. 10 minutes into the shed visit, he comes back out and begins chopping again. 50 minutes later, in the shed again. Oh my God, what's going on? This kid cannot even ever possibly beat us. In fact, he's for sure going to lose. He can't even chop wood hour in, hour out, like our guy can. Our guy, by the way, hasn't stopped chopping. Chop, chop, chop. Another 50 minutes. He disappears again for 10 minutes. Now it's hysteria. The end of the shift, they counted up the cords of wood chopped. To the amazement of everybody in there, the young kid had won. Everybody was shocked. How could this young kid outperform? How could he possibly outperform this veteran that had been chopping wood and was a massive guy nobody could ever beat? How could this young, smaller person possibly have beat this superstar in chopping wood? So they interviewed him, and they said, you won. But every hour, you couldn't even chop a straight hour. You went in the shed and you took a nap or rested or whatever you did inside the shed. And the young man looked at the people and he said, that's where you missed it. Every hour, I took 10 minutes and went in and sharpened my axe. I made my tools better, which created better performance. OMG. So how many of us are trying to chop wood all day long and not taking our 10-minute break to sharpen our axe? Our law enforcement, our military, they're training all the time. They're sharpening their axe every day because they know that they have to make split-second reflex decisions with predictable outcomes. They can't afford to just manhandle it. They can't just chop all day and hope to win. They can't just chop all day and hope to win. So if you're a leader out there, what are you doing to train your teams to have, and your leaders and your managers to have split-second reflexes on decision making with predictable outcomes? How are they handling your customers? How are they handling the employees? How are the employees handling the customers? How are your employees handling your vendors? How are you handling your leaders? How are we training our sales teams? How are we training our sales teams when they come up with challenges that they can, because of role play, because of technique training, they're able to come and make split-second reflex decisions with predictable outcomes? How are we training them? Are we teaching and training our teams to have the best reflex actions for these predictable outcomes? Are we doing it? Now, I know in my last 35 years, it's been my passion to train leaders. I've developed leaders. A lot of the leaders in my company have gone on to create their own successful companies. Companies I've helped and trained many, many years ago. Those people have gone on to be great leaders and develop not only companies but processes, and are winning spectacular awards this year as they've grown older. So, is training important? Is it life or death? It is life or death in your business. It creates life in your business. It creates life within your associates. It creates excitement with your customers when your people are trained and they see this disciplines of people that can give predictable outcomes. Give predictable outcomes of great service, great results for their clients, great results for you as the owner of the company. So here's the question. Are you training? Are you training to create your team members or get your team members the talent and skills to be able to have split-second reflexes with predictable outcomes for their leadership, their sales, your business growth, and your business success? I hope all of you have a great week this week. Take that time, take that 10 minutes an hour, and train your people, sharpen your axe, so you'll have split-second reflexes with your team for predictable outcomes.
We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Subscribe today to our podcast and send questions or thoughts to help@deanakers.com. Also, visit us at www.deanakers.com to listen to prior shows and view helpful videos. Also, great tips to download. Thanks again.